What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today I am finally pulling the trigger on installing the dual battery system in the Land Cruiser. You might be asking, why do you even need a second battery? The car comes factory with the battery already installed. Well, as I've found out, as you get more and more into overlanding and camping and all that stuff, you have more electronic items that you'll need to run. First starts off with a phone charger, then you're getting an air compressor, then you're getting a bigger air compressor, then lights, then all this type of stuff. And what happens is it drains your starter battery. And when you drain the starter battery, it is not good, especially when you're out there by yourself. Nobody give you a jump start. You can't even push this guy and pop the clutch because they're all automatics now. So as an extra safety precaution, I decided to do the dual battery in the Land Cruiser. However, a big problem that came up is these dual battery systems people are advertising cost a lot of money. Like, I'm talking about hundreds of dollars before you get into the actual mounting. You have to buy the charger, and then it comes with the kit with the cables and the monitoring stuff. It's a lot of money. So what I decided to do is I gave the guys at RedArc a call in Australia. By the way, they have the best customer service guys on the phone. Give them a call if you have any questions. But they recommended to use an isolator. What is an isolator? Well, an isolator is basically what everybody has been running in their 4x4s until the chargers and the smart alternators came out. Let me try to explain how the isolator works. Now keep in mind, I'm not an electrician, I don't do wiring for a living. I'm just relaying the message what I got from the customer service guy at RedArc. So basically on an older car like the Toyota Land Cruiser, we have what's called a standard alternator, and it charges at a regular rate of, it should be around like 13.5 to 13.7 volts at all times. Now that works fine with the isolator because the isolator is volt sensitive. Whenever it hits a certain amount of voltage, it will connect the two batteries so both of them will charge. Now once you shut off the car, the alternator stops charging the batteries. But keep in mind, the isolator still has both batteries connected because you just shut off the car. The voltage is still above the cutoff voltage, which is, I think it's about 12.5 or 12.7. So once you start using your electrical accessories with the car off, the voltage throughout will start dropping. Once it hits that cutoff voltage, I believe it's at 12.7 volts, the isolator will disconnect the two batteries. So the starter battery will stay untouched, whereas the auxiliary battery will keep on powering your powered accessories. Let's say you're charging your phone, you're pumping air in the tires, you've got the fridge on, and you completely deplete the auxiliary battery. Now, since the isolator has already separated the starter and the auxiliary battery, so when you start the car, the starter battery will be there fully charged for you. The car will start right up, the alternator will start charging the system, and once the isolator detects that, hey, you know, the car's back on, we're at over 13.5 volts, it'll connect the two batteries, and the alternator will also charge the auxiliary battery too, bringing everything back to normal. Not to mention, the isolator was substantially cheaper. I think the isolator was roughly about $130, whereas a BCDC charger would be close to $450, maybe even $500. The whole setup, all in all, cost me roughly, if I calculated correctly, roughly about 50% of what you would pay to buy a complete system, like a bolt-in system. And it really wasn't that hard to put together. Anyhow, before we get started, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button. And for more Land Cruiser and Overland content, don't forget to subscribe. So besides the battery, these are all the parts that I need for the second battery install. Now, all these parts will be listed in the description down below, so make sure you go ahead and check that out. Now let me go over them one by one. First of all, we have the battery isolator made by RedArc. We've got some battery terminals for the second battery. We've got a bunch of 100 amp fuses, couple of crimp connectors, some shrink tube. We've got the fuse block, which is basically holds the fuse in place. We've got the battery tie down. This is actually a really nice piece. It's made from aluminum. And then we've got the crimp and the cable cutters. As you guys have probably seen from my previous video, this is the space for the second battery. This is the SLE battery mount, the dual battery mount. It also houses the ARB dual compressor. And in the previous video, I also showed you how to make this relocation for the air quick connect. So now let's put the battery in. Okay, now that the battery's in, the fit is actually pretty good. There's still space to spare. This is a interstate battery that I got from Costco. It is a group size 86. The SLE battery tray actually comes with its own tie down, which is this guy right here. However, I'm not able to use this guy because of the two caps on the lead acid battery. They kind of just don't fit either way. So that is why we've got the aluminum one. So let me get this guy tied down and we will figure out the wiring. Now with the second battery securely mounted, this guy actually fit really well. It's not going anywhere. We have to find a location for the isolator. Initially, I was gonna put it right here since there's already some holes for there, some holes to mount. However, Red Arc recommends as close to the starter battery as possible, which is all the way over there. Over on the driver's side is a little bit more crowded. I didn't find any clean spot to mount this big old isolator. All the real estate's pretty much taken up. So I think I found a good spot for the isolator. If you look behind the driver's side headlight, there's a little flat spot right here. There's no existing holes. However, so I'm going to have to drill something, but if I place it right here, should be nicely tucked away and outside the engine bay and close to the starter battery. So let's drill some holes. There we go. Okay, so let's see if this guy fits in here. Oh wait, other way around. So we're gonna put him this way with the bolt in there, that nut on the other side. Just a regular 10mm bolt and nut locking. So I guess it could sit right here. Looks to be okay. There should be plenty of room for the bolt on the bottom. So I'm going to drill that out and we'll bolt everything down. So here are the two holes that I drilled. One right here and the other one right there. Now this right here, this area fits the isolator perfectly and is a flat surface. On the back, there's plenty of room for the little nuts. You can see right there, there's nothing back there. So let me go ahead and get the isolator finally bolted down and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I got the bolts in. They're just regular fender bolts with a locking 10mm nut behind it. So this guy right now is pretty sturdy. I also was able to do the ground wire right behind the headlight. There's just a bolt right there. Cleaned off the paint a little bit so it gets a good contact and the wire is long enough. So next thing I gotta do is figure out how long the wiring needs to be and run it to the batteries. So next up, we're gonna have to ground the auxiliary battery to the chassis itself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run a cable from the negative terminal all the way to the side of the chassis, which there's already holes for different types of bolts. So for this next step, you'll need to get some wire. Now, according to Red Arc, you will need 4-gauge wire. It should do the trick. Now, I just have this piece of scrap wire that I had laying around from a previous build. It's already got some terminals on there, but they don't look very healthy. So I'm going to redo these, put new terminals on, and put the new shrink tube on. First off, let's cut off these nasty terminals. So we do have our wire cutters, cable cutters actually, and these work really good. Just put them in there and then chop them off nice and clean.
Same for the other side. Done. So now we have really clean cut cables ready for the new crimps. So I was able to use the cable cutter to also remove the plastic coating at the end, so we're ready to crimp now. Now I got these brass crimps off of Amazon. Just like most of the other stuff, I'll have a link in the description down below, but this guy fits perfectly for 4-gauge wire, obviously. And the next thing you need to do is use the crimper that came with the cable cutters and crimp the wire shut. But you got to make sure you adjust them for the right wire size, because these are adjustable. I don't know if you can see that right there, but we can push the little spring down on the back and spin these guys to the correct size that we want. Now right there it says 4 on the top, 4 on the other side as well, so I believe we're good to go. So what I usually do is I put this guy inside the crimper and just kind of hold it so it doesn't move around, just like this. And then you want to put the cable that you have right here. Make sure all the strands are nice and neat inside. Into the hole like that. And press down. After you lock it down all the way, release, and there is your crimp. So we're all good to go. Now, if you want, since this is a ground cable, it doesn't really matter, but if you want, you can always put the shrink tube over it. So we got this guy, and make it look a little nicer, but it's pretty tight. It's ready to go. Okay, so here is my ground wire. We've got the terminal right here, the ground wire that I just made that runs all along the side and then ends up right here, mounted to the chassis, or grounded to the chassis. Now make sure you take off, use a wire brush or something, take off the paint off of the side of the chassis before you put it on there. Right now it's temporary, but once I get the final measurements and everything mocked down, I'll put some electrical grease on every one of these connectors. Next step, we'll be making a cable from the positive terminal of the starter battery to the isolator, then from the isolator to the positive terminal of the auxiliary battery. For those cables, make sure that they are fused. The fuse box that I got will house a 100 amp fuse, so should be more than enough to run in this setup. So this is the fuse holder that I got for my setup. Basically very simple, as you can tell. You have cable goes in here, cable goes out there, and a fuse in the middle. And also comes with a little cover to block off, you know, excess dirt or water or whatever. So make sure your positive cables are fused and we're ready to go. So let me measure out these positive cables, figure out where I'm going to put the fuses, and then come back when everything is cut to length. For this first junction box, we've got the fuse and the wires already installed. This is ready to go into the car. The lengths are already cut. I've already put the ends on, crimped them down really nice with the shrink tube. So we're ready to go. Alright guys, I have mounted the isolator, ran the wire underneath, I don't know if you can see that, but it's underneath the radiator support, comes out on the other side, goes around the chassis back here, underneath the air box. I have the fuse box right here, and then the cable goes up to the positive terminal right here. On the other side, the cable goes down, out from underneath the radiator support, into another fuse box with a 100 amp fuse, obviously. Then this side will go to the positive terminal. So the next thing to do is double check all the connections one last time, and then try to connect everything up. So that didn't catch on fire or blow up, so that's a good sign. So lastly, we have to hook up the auxiliary battery, but don't forget your little cover thing that came in the kit. Let's get it on. This. Okay, that didn't catch fire or blow up either, so also a good sign. So as of right now, the isolator is actually not connecting the two batteries. The reason being the on voltage has not been met yet. So let's take a look at what it is currently. Right now it is at 12.46. So the on voltage according to Red Arc would be 13.2. So what I'll do is I'll start the car, have the battery charge. Once it hits 13.2, I should hear the solenoid click down here and you'll see the little light come on. So let me give that a shot. Okay, so now I have the voltmeter connected to the starter battery, and then we have the auxiliary battery connected to the isolator. Let me start the car and see if I can reach 13.2 volts. Once it hit 13.2, you can see the light came on, and now it is charging the auxiliary battery. Let me turn it off and see if it shuts off. And there it goes. Now it got to 12.57 volts, and the isolator isolated the starter battery from the auxiliary battery. So now let's say I run all of this, the air compressor or the lights from the auxiliary battery, it will not affect the charge on the starter battery, and you will be able to start the car when you decide to. So now that we've tested and double checked that the isolator is working, the not so fun part will be reconnecting my accessories. However, because now we're running a dual battery system, these accessories like my compressor, my lights, etc., will need to be connected to the auxiliary battery over there. So yep, not really looking forward to that, but that will be for another day.
And that is it. Now, at the time of this recording, I have already been running the dual battery system for roughly about 3 weeks now. I've made a few upgrades, mainly to protect any type of shorts. I've actually covered the terminals on the isolator as well as on the battery itself. I've also done a little bit more sleeving on the cables, so that way there's less chances of it rubbing through and shorting out the whole thing. So far, I want to say the dual battery system has been working exactly how I imagined. I've had no issues with the car starting. Haven't really gone out for like a long camping trip yet, but I've definitely kept the fridge on for overnight and used the daylighters and all that stuff, and it seems to have no problem. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy, go ahead and hit that like button, and for more Land Cruiser and Overland content, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.